So close. Hey, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the BAMF podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty, and this is our Writers Chat Thursday. And before we get started, here is the cheesy music we play to convince Walt that we are a high production values professional podcast. 1 second. If that doesn't convince you, I'm not sure what will. So, with us today, we have Marvin Wynn of the Edge Comic. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, doing very well.
Appreciate you joining us. And my faithful co-host, J.R. Hanley, science fiction writer. How you doing, J.R.?
Doing great. That's some glorious artwork you got on the screen.
Yeah, it really is. Isn't that nice?
It is.
Well, why don't let's jump into it. Tell us about this comic, Marvin.
So The Edge is a comic about a drug, of course, called the Edge. This drug gives special abilities, ability to fly, the ability to duplicate yourself, the ability to create shields. But the more you use those abilities, the more it starts to ingrain itself into your skin, your cells, and then it can kill you.
Okay. So it's kind of like back in the old days when Spawn just had so much of that power.
Yes.
Before it was going to run out, you got to go back to hell. All right. And you've got issues 1 through 3 are out in stores right now. And
issue 1 is in stores now. Issue 2 is in previews right now.
All right. Cool. So you've been working on this for a few years then, if you're that far along, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Okay.
So just as an aside, we were actually getting ready to release issue 10 last March when the whole COVID thing happened, and we had to reevaluate our approach. So Second Sight was coming along, and I talked to their publisher, and he said to pitch the book, and we went ahead and pitched. And we were actually sitting on a new version of issue 1 that we decided to go ahead and publish that. So we started over from issue 1. So we are right now finishing up issue 15, 2 one-shots, and then a solo Revenant story.
Okay, cool. So what's your approach to this? Are you the writer? Are you the artist? A little bit of both?
The writer.
Okay. How do you approach doing comic scripts? Do you do like full script or more Marvel style? What works for you?
We do full scripts. Okay. It just helps a little bit more with descriptions. But what ends up happening a lot of times is that once I hand it over to Mark Louis to do the art, sometimes I have to make changes to adjust for paneling, for dialogue, and things like that.
Okay.
When you
go ahead.
When you say you do full script, does that mean you do, script like a scenario, like almost like a cue card for each panel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, then full dialogue, any subtext, any captions or anything like that are also included on the script.
So you're basically picturing this in your head before the art is drawn, and then having him come in and make the art for it.
Right. So I'm imagining one thing. He's probably imagining something else. So it's like you've got 2 cameramen on set.
Does that ever cause any hilarious hiccups?
No. And I say is that we're in the stead of finishing up 18 issues, and I only had to make one change. Asked to make one change, and that was a character's hairstyle.
That's not bad at all.
No.
Hey, I've got a unique situation here where I was going to share the Comixology page for your book, but it's like as long as my arm. But the Comixology page for your creator page, where they can find that easily, is much shorter. So I'm going to share that as a banner there. You can check out The Edge right now in Comixology, and this is a cool book. So how long have you been involved in comics publishing? Is this your first foray into it, or you done a couple books before this?
So we actually originally published The Edge for the first time, I think 2014. I think we originally published that first issue 1, and I mean we had moderate success, I would say, but I think that our reach was very thin because I contacted stores around the world. Any store that spoke English, I was trying to get in contact with them, and a lot of them said, "Well, the book looks good, but if you were in Diamond," so it was always we like it, but we'd rather order if it's through Diamond. So they're like, so once you get into Diamond, give us a call back.
What is Diamond?
Diamond is the catalog for comic stores.
Okay.
So, that's has that changed these days? Because there was a big thing with DC going away from Diamond, right?
So when the shutdown happened back in March, 2 other distributors popped up, Lunar and UCS, which was pretty much discount comic book service in Midtown. So UCS has gone the wayside, and Lunar is the only one left. So DC is being distributed through Lunar, and coming in October, Marvel is leaving Diamond and going to Penguin Random House to do distribution.
Wow, you gotta wonder what Diamond's going to do then.
We're going to find out, because I mean, come October, that they're losing another big chunk of their revenue. So we're going to see how they're going to try to cover that goal, or that get over that goal, and see what happens.
All right. Hey, we had a question from the comments. Nathan, who is a frequent commenter on our podcast, wants to know what a comic strip looks like. I guess I should preface that by saying usually we're talking more literary fiction, although I'm a big comics nerd myself, and so is Walt. So he's wondering if you can describe a comic strip to him.
Sure. So, I mean, how about me? So I'll talk about it, and then let me see if I have any in my Google I can share. So, okay. It's basically you're doing shorter prose where you're breaking down an entire scene of what you want to see. So, let's say you were doing a movie script where you're doing intros and outros. So it's very similar to that, in that you're just telling the artist how every panel should be formed. So you're saying that it's day, it's night. There's this thing in the corner. There's not this thing in the corner. The character is in this pose. The character's smiling. The characters doing an action, things like that. So, I mean, but it could be different. Like, I would say that there are so many different ways to do it. I actually was talking to someone and saying that there's so many different ways to do this. So how do you decide what the right way is? And I think that just comes down to between you and the person that you're working with to do these stories. So even I have done scripts in different ways, and just see how differently you can do it and how it works. So I have got this up here. Let me share my screen. So this is the script for issue 1.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so you're doing page, and then you're saying how many panels generally. So it's a splash page, meaning it's one panel. Mm-hmm. And then you see that it just goes down the line there. So then your page 2, panel 1, panel 2, panel 3. Then you've got your description of what's going on, your caption, and then your character dialogue.
So, I mean, it's full comic script, so it's more comprehensive than Marvel style, which is almost just an outline. But This looks like it's a little more relaxed than like a movie script style, which is a little more rigid in terms of formatting and stuff, I think.
Right. So, I mean, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that would more easily translate if you wanted to turn it into like a story, like literary too. Yeah. He's got the setting, he's got everything you need.
Right. So the way you said, the way Marvel does it, they do an outline, hand it over to the artist, and then when the art comes back, then you do the dialogue and things like that. But I mean, you're trying with this style, you're trying to set a mood for the artist. So I like to give as much explanation as I can, but I've been working with Mark for so long that we really get a good line on the rapport on what we're doing. So like you said, that I don't have to put a lot of descriptions in the panel. As long as it's a flowing, moving story, he's fine with picking up the pieces. Hey, you're on mute.
I said that's the beauty of collaboration, right? Yeah. Or that's what I would have said if I wasn't on mute. So who are some of your inspirations in terms of comic storytelling?
Well, I would probably say, going back into the 80s, 90s, I would say Chris Claremont was probably my biggest influence as far as writing. And then probably Jim Lee for paneling and structure in that process. So the book is very influenced by the X-Men, Wildcats, and things like that.
Oh wow, that's a blast! I haven't thought about the Wildcats in a year or two. That's been a while.
So, Grifter is back in Batman in the new Batman books.
I did not know that. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool. That's the kind of book they should probably reboot here sometime. Of course, DC does so many reboots; it's easy to lose track of them.
Well, they had a book called Wildstorm, and it got canceled, and they were going to do a Wildcats book, and that got canceled.
Mm. Yeah, everything gets canceled these days. It's a bummer. Yeah. So, Well, hey, big ups for you, man. You're making a splash in Indy Comics, and that is a hard segment to get some attention in.
Right.
Have you ever thought about trying to do something easier? Like powerlifting, Krav Maga, maybe MMA.
Well, I mean, if it was easy, then like everyone could do it and everyone would succeed, and no one would ever rise to the top, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's fair enough. Well, cool. Have you ever thought about adapting any of your stuff into novels, or looking for development deals beyond comic books?
I mean, people ask that a lot, and it's honestly something that I've tried to put in the back burner because I feel like that it somewhat detracts from our purpose here is to tell a good story and get a good book out into people's hands. So I'm not saying no to it, but it's something that I just keep in the back of my mind just in case someone does say, "Hey, would you like to do this?" So it's there, but I'm really not focusing on it right now.
All right, fair enough. How do you keep up with? I mean, art with your artists? Do you have a daily word count you got to stick to, or is it a little bit easier than that for you?
No, I mean, since we're so far ahead, we're pretty much working when we can, because like I have a 9 to 5, and Mark has he does freelance stuff on the side also. So it's just whenever either one of us has an idea on something or we say something new, I'm just shooting over to him new scripts or new data and things like that, and he's shooting over ideas to me. I had just shot him some ideas over for covers because it looks like we're going to do 3 covers for each issue, which is going to be 2 going to stores, and then 3 more will be going. Or the other one will be either special edition, either from the Second Sight website or from me myself.
Okay. Cool.
So what's the standard length of pages for one of your comics?
24 pages is usually the standard. We usually hit 32 though, but it just depends. I don't want to force story. So if I feel like that it's I only have 20 pages of story that we can do, then we do 20 pages. And it's just being able to know when the stopping point is on that issue.
Well, that's why you've got Hostess snack cake ads to fill in those extra 10 pages or so. I'm a big fan of those old ads.
Yeah.
All right, just sharing some of your art from your webpage here. Maybe the easier ways for people to find you is your website's actually super easy to find.
Yes.
Just Marvin Wynn at wixsite.com/The Edge Comic.
Right. You can use theedgecomic.com is a go through, because I do own the domain. I just don't have any web space for it yet. So I'm building the website before I decide to go out and buy that space.
So we have a question from the chat from Nathan. He says he writes more movie scripts, so he's curious what the difference between a movie script and this is. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Marvin, to speak to it.
I would say that a movie script is you're doing more intro outro, where you're saying that a character enters the scene, a character leaves the scene. So it's more in the vein of a play. Okay. And you're really not telling the cameraman where to point the camera. I mean, unless you want them to focus on something specific, like there's a flower pot and it's leading to something, and eventually the characters pick up that flower pot and hit somebody in the head with it. They're like foreshadowing that this is going to happen later in the story. So I mean, comic scripts and movie scripts are very similar, and I know a lot of people use like Final Cut to do script writing.
Hey, Walt has entered the chat. Hey, Walt.
Entered the room. Walt entered the room.
Walt appears. How's it going, Mr. Billyard?
Oh, living the life of a kung fu supermodel.
So, Marvin, has the stories when you're writing, from what you write to what you give your artists, ever taken any surprising turns on you, like that you didn't see coming?
Yes, multiple times in the story, even with the character Revenant. So, and Walt will probably attest to this, that Revenant has become a very popular character. And that led me to deciding to do a one-shot with Revenant to go over his background. I got to say it's like a dive into the mind of the madman, where we're going to find out why he is the way he is. And if the character wouldn't have taken off as well, I probably wouldn't have done that. And in all honesty, in my original version of the script, he didn't make it out of issue 4.
Okay.
That dude is 10 pounds of crazy in a 5-pound bag.
Yeah, so I mean, it's listening to the audience but not giving them exactly what they want, because generally I find that giving an audience exactly what they want leads to them keep asking for it. I don't want Revenant to turn into like that Harley Quinn or that Sabretooth type character that you never know what side they're on. I want him to firmly be on the side, which is his side.
Okay.
Sorry, I was once again on mute. Revenant, right here.
Yes.
Entering into a command center from the air vents the way all true heroes do.
Yes.
Sweet.
There's always an air vent built big enough for a person to fit through.
You guys specify that during the construction process. That's a very specific need. Well, tell us about this guy. So he's kind of the breakout character, but we're not wanting him to like become his own thing like Harley Quinn or Sabretooth did. Tell us about him.
Right. So I mean, he's a jerk, and I won't say that he's outright evil. He's got his own motivation, and he doesn't want to be controlled. He sees the world in his own way, and he doesn't feel like he should ever have to work with anybody unless they can help him. So there will be situations where he'll end up teaming up with someone, but then when the person needs the most, he'll just stand around and watch. So it's one of those things where someone gets grabbed and gets punched in the face, and he'll go, "Hey, guy, you just got punched in the face. It looked pretty funny." So he is the only one so far that we're aware of that has had direct contact with the Edge. So his abilities are that he can duplicate himself from a single drop of blood. So he's pretty much a one-man army. So he's the guy that you drop behind enemy lines with a knife that he talks to. His knife he thinks is alive. He calls it Mr. Idiom, and he questions it and asks it for assistance at all times.
So Walt, you basically drew Walt.
or a grenade. So he's very seldomly going to pull a pin on a grenade and just stand there and let it explode in his hand.
So he's got self-duplication power, so he could cut himself, bleed, leave a trail of blood, and each droplet is becoming a new dude.
Yes.
All right. Well, hey, Walt, I feel like we're talking over you, and you just joined the call. Appreciate you jumping in, sir. You got any questions for Marvin?
Yeah. When's the next issue going to drop?
Issue 2 is in previews right now.
Issue 2?
Yes.
Oh! Did you relaunch?
Yes.
Oh, because like I have I have 9 issues on my hard drive. I'm like, wait a minute now.
Yeah, we relaunched when we joined Second Sight. And see that?
Right.
Yeah, it's a brand new issue 1. You haven't been following me on Facebook?
Walt's been really busy.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll catch up pretty soon because we're going to probably end up doing 2 books a month over the summer. So we should catch up in no time. Yeah.
So do you dive into the existential question of who he really is, if he can duplicate himself so many times, who the real him is, and what are the
that comes up later because they like it's proximity and it's timing because you think it's dead cells. So we will deal with if there is a rogue clone out there eventually.
You get very existential and meta with that stuff.
Yes, and it's funny that that rogue clone could be a little closer than he thinks it is.
Okay.
So
now with the
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
No, Walt, please continue.
I was going to say now with the relaunch, is there any changes in the story, or are we just seeing the issues come out one at a time until we catch up, and then we start with the new stories?
Well, issue 1 is redone. It's a brand new issue 1. Everything else is the same.
Right on. And what about? I know I'm jumping really ahead, but are you still planning to go with the Chaos Rising storyline too? Yes.
Yes. All the arcs are still the same. Well, we didn't. Issue 1 we decided to redo because there were some slight things that I wanted to fix. The other issues we decided were good, so we didn't want to make any changes to those. So yeah, the next arc, starting with issue 5, is Reign of Chaos. So we'll get to that issue 10, and it shouldn't be that. It won't be that long.
That's so awesome, Mike. I think you were on mute again.
We're just going to play a game on this podcast where Mike's always on mute, and you guys can just think of what I'm saying. Mike, no, that's so inappropriate. Don't say that. What? All right. So for anyone who doesn't know, Second Sight is an indie comic publisher, and they're pretty easy to find. They are just secondsightpublishing.com, and here you can see the Edge #2 and their releases.
Yeah, Second Sight is really pumping out the product. Books are selling out. They're selling like hotcakes, I'll say. If you go over to Midtown Comics, most of the books are either sold out or are now selling for over retail.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's been a lot of reorders. So we are going to do a reprint of issue 1. I am trying to set up so we do it as a community where the community can pick the cover. I've got 3 covers to use for issue 1. So we may do a community, like put it up there and say, you guys vote on what the cover is going to be. And then one lucky person will win something fancy.
Fancy.
Something fancy.
That's fancy.
Yeah. So it could be one of these guys here.
Oh, nice.
I have him on my shelf from the previous boxes that you've sent.
Yeah, I just gave you the big solo window there, Marvin, so you can show that off.
So we are right now trying to find a source to make more of these. So we want to do Blaine and then Interim next, and then do the whole entire series. So we got some things in the works for extra media. So I did just get these keychains. They're polystone a little bit and a little bit of soft plastic, but I think I want to do these more in metal. Because this little piece here, some people said this is broken off and the legs have broken off when they've gotten them.
Yeah, that's the problem with merch.
Yeah.
Quality control.
Right.
Well, so, I mean, we talked to a lot of comics guys on this podcast over the last 10 years. And I got to say, not many of them reach the level that you've got. I mean, it's does it ever feel like kind of surreal having a book that actually gets into stores in people's hands?
Yeah, it is. I mean, but when I started out with this, my number one goal was to support LCSs and make sure, because it's been and it's time that I've been doing this. I've seen stores close. I saw a store last year in Hawaii that was open for 30 years just die because they couldn't open because of COVID. And the guy who ran it wasn't interested in doing online sales, so he just said 70% off. Everybody come in the store and take up. I'm just quitting. So you don't want to see that, because to me that's a landmark. 30 years is a long time for it to have a business open, and for it just to fold like that is bad for the industry. So
it's bad with the fandom too. I mean, people stay engaged when they can go to a local comic shop, talk to people about their hobby.
So yeah, that was one of my number one goals when starting out, was to service the comic shops, talk to the comic stores, find out how the books are doing, and like keep it. I like try to send out emails every once in a while and ask, hey, how's the book doing? We don't have any copies of the book. Are you reordering? Yes, but it's diamond, so it's going to take a while. So I'm like, yeah, okay. I mean, as long as people are enjoying it and getting out there and grabbing it, I mean, it's cool with me.
Cool. So what's next? You've got a lot of plans. The relaunch, new publisher, coming up on issue 10. 2 issues a month in the summertime. That's a lot going on. You ever stop and think, where are we going to go next story arc, next book, that kind of thing?
I mean, but that's the good thing about being up to issue 15. It gives us a vision of where we want the story to go next, and we've got plans all the way up to issue 25. And
wow.
Issue 25 is where things divert, and then it could become anything from there. Like we've got almost world-ending events. We've got universe-ending events almost. We've got space. So we're trying to reach the gamut of trying to. And the one thing that we like to talk about is escalation, because each arc is an escalation of the last one. So you've had this one event with this one character, then all these other things start happening, which just keeps pounding and pounding and compounding on itself. And then we're going to go back in time and go over Mystic Swords. We're going to go over Interim leaving her portals open since she was 6 years old, and what the consequences of that is. So it's a lot of forward, a lot of backwards, and just a lot of story to tell.
So how many retcons do you need before you can catch up with Marvel?
That's the one thing that we're going to seriously avoid is having to not only retcon, but then reboot for another issue 1 again and just say, oh, well, there's a new team, so we need a new issue 1. No, I mean, it's not a new story. It's the same story, just continuing on. Like people will leave, people may die, and if what happens if people quit? You just have to keep going. It's like it's like a football team, right? You next man up, right?
Okay. So I know one thing Walt has taught me about the RPG business is if you want to make a little bit of money, you have to start with a lot. Is it the same in the comic industry?
Yes. you have to save money up to do this venture because it's more expensive than I thought it was going to be when I first started. So you're thinking, it's a couple $100 now. No.
Yeah, a few years ago, my financials are going to be out of date. But a few years ago, I had a comic strip, and I was like, "Oh, we'll get this together. 20 pages art. How much can that possibly cost?" Much more than you thought.
Yes.
And then, go ahead, sir.
I mean, you want to have quality talent. You have to pay for quality talent.
So speaking of quality talent, this is a writing podcast. So if we've got people that listen after the fact that say, "Hey, I want to get into comics," what advice would you give them?
My always number one advice is to not give up because the first thing you write is going to be garbage. It doesn't matter what it is. The first thing I wrote whenever I started doing this is absolute garbage. And one day I will publish it on either through the newsletter or on Facebook and Twitter or something, and I'll show people. I'll prove it that it wasn't good at all. You get when you get influenced by things that you're watching or something that you're reading, you don't want it to permeate and take over your craft. You want to be able to take those influences and turn it into something new. So it's perseverance, and it's about getting knocked down and getting back up.
What are your influences these days? What do you watch to get inspired, or just to get yourself in that superhero writing mode?
I would say that the MCU is a good one. That's something that has that escalation factor where you're building on a single story and just keeping it going. It doesn't look like they're going to reboot anytime soon, so it's that kind of thing where you're like, all right, the Tony Stark is gone. Who do we bring in to replace Tony Stark? Do we bring another Tony Stark? Nope, we bring in War Machine. So it's about that kind of thing. So Invincible, any of those new comic shows, The Boys are big influences on that. And those are things that I really don't like to sit down and read too many like Marvel, DC comics. I read more indies now, just to say that this is my competition and my friend. So if they're doing this, then I have to do better.
Cool. Yeah, I've been feeling the same way for, oh God. Well, I started reading indies a few years ago, and it's a rare moment for me to pick up something for the big two, unfortunately.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, in the indie books is where the heart is at, because you're not writing someone else's creation. You're writing your own creation. So you're going to put everything you have into it to make it the best thing you can. But you can also look to the Marvels and DCs and see what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, and try and course correct with your own stuff.
So you were one of the first indies out there that really caught some traction before Kickstarter, before a lot of the Indiegogo and crowdfunding hit. You were out there and you were pimping the book like basically store to store and door to door.
Mm-hmm.
It was really kind of like inspirational to see how you were doing it.
Right. Well, I mean, we took that grassroots approach because, like I said, that barrier with Diamond, where we weren't able to get in there originally. So it came down to finding out where these stores are, getting those emails, getting those phone numbers, and just calling them up and saying, "Hey, I got this book. Here's a preview of the book," and either getting that yes or no. But I mean, that whole entire Diamond work thing just opens doors to the world. And because people are still in that mode that I just want to order from Diamond, but we're going to see what happens, because now they're going to have to order from 3 different distros.
Yeah, it's not like life wasn't already hard enough for comic shops.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the guys that I've talked to are say it differently. They say they don't mind because they do games, and you're not just ordering from one game distributor. There's 20 different game distributors you could probably order from, and you're picking and choosing who has what, so you're doing that order. So it's a challenge for some and not a challenge for others. So I mean, we'll see how it goes, but I know that when DC made their decision, a lot of stores dropped DC.
Yeah, I hate to say it, I haven't been inside a comic shop since COVID hit. I have all my stuff's on Comixology these days, except for the occasional Kickstarter that shows up in the mail. You watch Falcon and Winter Soldier?
Yes.
What'd you think about that?
I thought it was great. I mean, I'm an MCU kind of guy, and both the series I thought were really good and really gave that background and that information for those second tier characters you don't usually get from these movies. They usually get left to the side or just a sidekick, or now they're not sidekicks anymore. Now they can put them in their own movie and they can carry their own movies.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, even characters, usually Wanda and the Vision don't get 7 hours of screen time.
Yes.
So you can kind of go into that a little bit. Well, hey, we're heading towards the top of the hour. We're right there. Walt, do you have any follow-up questions? Closing thoughts?
I'm just really stoked to see where this goes, because I think it's just absolutely fantastic, the longevity that the book has had. Now, with you going on Substack, do you have plans for things behind like the paywall, so like people who subscribe and get that paid tiered subscription can kind of get like extra content?
Yes. Well, I've been sending out little sneak peekies already through Substack that I haven't posted. So if anyone wants to check out the newsletter, there's some stuff up there that I haven't shared anywhere else. But I mean, as it grows and it gets pretty high up in numbers, that could be something I could think about doing. I mean, I am planning to do later this year a whole entire series where it's going to be from script to completion. So I'm going to detail the whole entire process of creating a comic book.
Oh, wow. So people who want to see behind the scenes, check out the edgecomic.substack.com. You can get some of that BTS content.
Yeah. I think that's going to be I'm going to do video too on that one too, just to give it the whole entire gamut of this is what the thought process is. When I hand it over to Mark and he does his thing, and then it goes to Luis for colors and then James for letters. And then it'll detail it all the way up into the book going to the store.
Sweet. I just want to say BTS one more time because it really gets our numbers up there. So, all right, JR, any closing thoughts, follow-ups before we call it?
No, he's answered all of the questions. I'd be curious to see what happens when he does his next Kickstarter. So we might have to have him back. Look at me just inviting people onto your show.
I guess we should mention that JR has his own show too, the Blasters and Blades podcast.
Good.
So something else to check out. All right. Well, hey, Marvin, been a real pleasure to have you on, sir. Any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, just keep reading them and we'll keep writing them or creating them.
Cool. And thanks to all our listeners and viewers, and we will catch you next time on the BAMF podcast.
Thank you.